So, first thing, I want to have Rhett talk about this, because I've talked to Rhett, and one of the first concerns I had, or not concerns, but first things that lost me in the movie, and I've seen it 3 times, and every time it gets better and better and better, because I'm slowly accepting the decisions that were made, and I'm slowly absorbing the way the story is told, where I can deal with it. But I shouldn't have to see a movie 3 times to fully enjoy it and fully comprehend it. And I'm terrible with plot, and I'll admit that. I don't always follow who's doing what and what the side schemes are, and it doesn't all work for me. I don't catch every line of dialogue when they hint things that are being explained. I'm bad about that. But the time lapse from Force Awakens to this movie, it seems, you have Rey holding the lightsaber at the end of the last movie. Could have been the beginning of this movie, but that's fine. I didn't mind that. I love the opening sequence with Poe and the attack on the Dreadnought and everything. Fantastic. I think one of the best space battles in any Star Wars movie. But it felt like there was a gap from the destruction of Starkiller Base to all of a sudden the rebels are on the run and in the atmosphere, like they knew where they were. Apparently I missed the plot line or point in the last movie that they knew where the base was. I don't understand how they found out where the base was. And it didn't make sense to me that suddenly they were there under attack, where it seemed like that would have been a little bit of time. The other problem I had is in the opening crawl, it said that the First Order has like all control, and the Resistance is just like almost extinguished. It didn't seem that way at all in the last one. It seemed like they were genuinely scared when the Resistance was coming, and they were coming to save them on the Maz's planet. So that little chronology bothered me. So Rhett, you've explained it, but I have a big problem with it.
So first off, I just want to point out, after The Force Awakens, when I was reading all the information about the next movie, my biggest concern was the lack of time jump. Every Star Wars movie has had a time jump. Yeah. When I found out that this Episode 8 was not going to have a significant time gap from Episode 7, I was like, that's weird. That's not Star Wars. So, the biggest, I guess, the way that I perceived it going into it, though, was this movie is like Empire in that sense. Because while Han and Leia are running from the Empire, Luke's on Dagobah, and that timeline never really matches up. Like, you have to go and
you have to figure out how long he was on Dagobah and all that stuff. Is that what you mean?
Right. You listen to a lot of stuff or watch a lot of videos or whatever else, and that explains more about the timeline, and it's still very unclear as far as the official, like, canon timeline goes.
Right.
But, despite that, I think that in the context of this movie as it is, everything still kind of flows together, right? Rey leaves to go meet Luke. After she leaves, they begin the evacuation of Dakar, which is the planet that the Resistance base was on. As they're beginning the evacuation, in Force Awakens, they do specifically mention Snap Wexley is the Resistance pilot that goes and scouts out Starkiller Base, and they track him back to the planet Dakar.
What scene did they say that?
I don't know the specifics that happened in, but I just know Snap Wexley is the...
They know where it is. That's one of the reasons they know they have to take out Starkiller Base.
Right. It's the same, like, in that sense, they were very much recreating
in
the
war room scene?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. But that was very much a scene in The Force Awakens where they are reflecting A New Hope, in that the Resistance planet has been revealed to the First Order. The First Order is going to redirect their planet system killing weapon towards the Resistance system, and so they have to destroy the base before they can recharge the energy to shoot at Dakar.
Right,
which is where
and that was the time frame for the blow it up.
Right. Exactly. And that's why, this is somewhat of a tangent, but that's why the destruction of Starkiller Base makes sense, because they destroy the thermal oscillator, as it's known, at the time that it contains as much power as it does to destroy a system. So when they blow up the thermal oscillator, it destroys the entire planet because
all the power it absorbed from the sun became unstable.
Right, exactly. But, going back to The Last Jedi, Snap Wexley was tracked in his return to Dakar. They know where the base is, but they were at the same time coordinating an assault against the entire galaxy. That's why the First Order fleet is not available at Starkiller Base, and that's why the entirety of the fleet is not available when they attack Dakar. They only have a limited number of ships because everything else, all their other resources, are tasked to bringing the galaxy under the control of the First Order.
It just really feels like it's like they're stretched way too thin, that they can't have any backup in this little slow speed chase, and that they have like the one dreadnought there, and like it's just it just really feels like with as much as the galaxy was apparently terrorized, that they didn't even respond to Leia's plea at the end of this movie. They could have like spared a Star Destroyer or two to come. It just felt weird. That was like, here's this big climactic moment, the end of the Resistance, but we better not pull these people.
I think that's weird within the context of the movie because we don't have that knowledge,
right?
That they've decided to engage the entire Republic across the galaxy,
and that's just where like from the crawl of the first movie to the crawl of this movie is like, wait, where did this big power swing happen? And that's all it was. It just felt like way weird. It just felt like a totally different galaxy
because it happened instantly. There's other little things too. It's like C-3PO's arm is fixed. And it's like, sure, there may have been some passage of time, but was that really a priority when they're evacuating the planet to fix his arm? And at first we didn't even know if Finn's jacket from Poe was stitched. Apparently it is.
Everyone ripped on that.
But
I didn't even think about it.
But why is it fixed? That's the thing. Like, this is a priority. Let's stitch this up while we're evacuating. It's just kind of weird. Whereas if you had a passage of time, even Rey's training, she would have. If you had some passage of time, her on the island would have made way more sense for how powerful she is in so little amount of time.
Now, wouldn't you have been disappointed, Rhett, if there was a passage of time between them and you didn't get to see Luke's reaction to her extending the lightsaber? Because remember, as we were going to the theater, I was like talking for 10 minutes about all my speculations about what he was thinking about, and while he was like pondering and meditating, what he sensed to the Force of all this stuff that happened in the first movie, and what his reactions could have been. And then he tosses the freaking lightsaber.
Well, I think based on everyone's reaction to that scene, no, it wouldn't have bothered anyone if they had skipped that.
I would have
because
been so
nobody, I should say, a good number of people seem to have not understood what that scene was about.
Right.
But I think that a passage of time is much more Star Wars. But in the context of the movie as they presented it to us, the passage of time is inconsequential. Because, and this was a thing that I mean, whether I read this in one of the books or whatever else, when I watched The Force Awakens, and they said that they had like their fleet of ships, but the fleet wasn't available at Starkiller Base for whatever reason. My understanding was at the time, that's because they're planning an all-out offensive against the galaxy. So I don't know if that's just the way that I viewed it personally. It's entirely possible. But
I thought in the novelization that they called him back, but it was going to take time for them to come back, and that's why the Resistance had a limited amount of time to blow up the Starkiller Base before the rest of the First Order troops arrived, or the First Order fleet.
In the novelization, yes. But also, just from my personal perspective of watching The Force Awakens, I felt like I understood they didn't want to pour all their resources into Starkiller Base. They wanted to spread things out a little bit. And a part of that included they were trying to take over multiple systems to bring under First Order space. And this is my personal viewing of The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. It just felt very much like, of course you wouldn't want to put all of your ships into one system. You don't want everything in one place, because as the New Republic found out with the destruction of the Hosnian system, putting everything in one place makes it very easy for the enemy to take everything out.
So again, wasn't that one of the criticisms of the first movie, was like, how did this small group, the First Order, that was coming up out of the ashes of the Empire, have the resources to build Starkiller Base and control the entire galaxy?
I think if you want to know the answer to that question, you do need to look into the expanded universe.
I think that's an EU question, yeah.
But
because as far as how much money and how much resources and how much whatever else the First Order has access to,
right.
the movie tells you everything you need to know. The First Order has a vast amount of resources, a vast amount of ships.
And they have some crazy scientist. I want to know who this scientist is. Like, he is coming up with all sorts of, not just Starkiller Base, but the tracking through hyperspace.
Some dude has been around since the Empire or something that's been able to come up with all this crap.
Yeah, invent all this crazy technology.
Some guy that can invent a laser that goes through hyperspace. Like, that in itself is probably the technological marvel of the age.
Who is this guy? That's what I want to know.
It's Snoke.
It's me.
It's Snoke.
No, it's me.
All right.
It's been me the whole time.
All right. Well, it just didn't feel comfortable. It didn't feel like the transition, like, from her extending the hand, like, it seemed like a lot of things flopped or flipped in the galaxy. I just felt out of place when it started with what was going on. I was fine with the attack, but then when it led into, like, by the way, this is the end of the Resistance, and there are all these at least 4 ships, that's it. And it wasn't until later I had to read about that Leia's Resistance was not the same as the new, what is it?
The New Republic?
Yeah, the New Republic.
No, it wasn't.
So
it was a cell.
So it was the New Republic, and then she was just a small faction, but, like, you didn't get that out of the movies. But anyway, moving on. That was my first point, though, Josh, was, like, I felt a little disoriented right from the beginning.
And you were disoriented, why? Because he threw the lightsaber over his shoulder?
No, that's a whole nother point. But just how the
suddenly the First Order is completely dominant.
Everyone is suppressed underneath them.
They control the galaxy.
Okay.
And it just didn't feel. It felt like there was like the Empire versus the Rebel Alliance. Like they're both working pretty well.
Well, I think in counter to that, the original trilogy never tells you how the Empire got into power.
No,
it's just accepted that they were.
Right, but you can feel it through the visuals, like the Star Destroyer and the Tantive 4, or the conversations on the Death Star and the Council and things like that.
And I would argue The Last Jedi does that very effectively by having the Dreadnought, by having the Supremacy, by having all these ships, all these weapons, all this manpower available in order to do this, despite the fact that at the same time that they're trying to take out the Resistance, they're also conquering the rest of the galaxy.
Right. What were you going to say, Josh?
Well, and of course they're not gonna tell you everything about the backstory now. How are they gonna make a prequel later? I mean, that's what.
Solid point.
I mean, right? That's totally what's gonna happen. You're gonna find out everything about, because everyone's interested in the new Sith. Everyone's interested in the new, in Kylo Ren and his backstory with Luke and all of that. I mean, I guarantee you, as soon as this story is over, the next step is going to be prequels about how they all rose to power and all that stuff. It's going to happen. They're not going to end with Episode 9.
I'm totally okay with a Kylo Ren solo film. I will make that stance right now.
Yeah.
Adam Driver in his Rise to Darkness, I'm absolutely fine with
solo film.
Just
Can he look young enough for that long of a movie? I don't know.
It's called technology.
We CG him the whole movie.
All right.
He looks young.